Hello. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Welcome to Gateway Queer, Genderqueer, and Male Romance. I'm your host, and we have three awesome queer author guests here to discuss all the intricacies of being a genderqueer person in the male romance community and in the broader queer romance community at large. So I guess we might as well get started. My first question is just to introduce yourself, give your names, your pronouns, and then tell us about the first queer book you ever read. So I don't know if we want to go in a circle or if somebody wants to volunteer to go first.
I can go first.
Okay.
So I'm HR Harrison. I use she and they pronouns. I am agender, aromantic, and asexual. AAA. My first queer book was... I was thinking really hard about this question, trying to remember like the first actual queer book, and it wasn't until well into my 20s, I'm pretty sure. But one of the first queer fan fictions I read was when I was like 10, and it was Fire Emblem fic, written by Rihanna Hime, something like that.
What kind of fic was it?
It was Raven and Lucius from Fire Emblem Blazing Sword. Back before it actually had the subtitle, because I'm old.
Oh, someone recognized your Dorian pillow in the background.
Yes, Dorian is here just to have fun with us today.
Cool. All right, who's next?
Okay, if we're going around, I guess it's me. I write as Heidi Cullinan. I'm June. I'm they, them. My first... I have gone round and round trying to decide. I think if you would probably have to technically be me as a teenager sneaking into the Anne Rice Sleeping Beauty books at B. Dalton back in the day when that was a thing. I feel I'm now officially old enough that there will be people who have no idea what B. Dalton was. So, yeah, that was my first. I mean, I don't know, it's complicated. There was a great mystery that I read that was a lot later, so that would have to probably be the first Everything Goes.
I think I read those Anne Rice books when I was way too young as well, actually.
Yeah, I didn't ever read the whole thing. I would read I read them like out of context and in weird spurts, like whenever I was at a bookstore.
Yeah, I think I got them out of the library because I was like, oh, I like Anne Rice, and then I started reading them, and I was like, whoa, what is that? Totally unprepared.
I suppose I should also... This is Mitch.
Oh yes.
This thing is backwards, so it keeps going off. This is Mitch. He's
our star attendee here.
He decided to join us. So.
All right, and Alex, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alex. I hope everybody can hear me. I use they, them pronouns, and like everybody else, I had a really hard time deciding what counted as like queer romance, and the first thing that I read that actually had an romance in it was actually Mercedes Lackey's Magic's Promise. And that one was like back when I was a teenager, a long time ago now. So I also read fanfic as well. So I can't remember the very first fanfic I read. It was probably like a dreary fanfic from like Harry Potter. So yeah.
Can't go wrong with good dreary. It's a classic.
I think I read that Mercedes Lackey as well when I was younger on your recommendation, Alex. It's pretty good. I'd have to read it again sometime. All right, so next question is, how did you get your start writing and publishing gay/queer fiction?
Well, I guess we could just go in the same order.
Yeah.
I started, of course, writing fan fiction because that's what I had read. So I've written in a couple different fandoms. And from there, I started branching out and doing retellings. I'm really big into myth and folklore. And so I started writing some of my favorite fairy tales from my youth as queer romances. And when I saw that Less Than Three Press was accepting those and wanted those, I was like, well, I might as well. I have it already written. So I sent it to them, and here I am today.
The rest is history.
Yep.
Another one. I like how to be succinct. I started writing way back in 2000. I started writing a book that I was trying to submit to one of the Harlequin imprints at the time, and it had somebody sent me a thing on some group I was in. They posted some shirt for International Pirate Day, it was a pirate costume type of just the shirt underneath, and I don't know why, but then I saw that and my brain said, you're gonna put a gay secondary romance in this book, and I'm like, sure. And everybody who read it said, you are so much more invested in the queer romance here than the straight. And so then eventually I rewrote it and then did that for 7 years. And that one's never published. That one's still that will never see the light of day. I try every now and again. And I'm like, no, that's not happening. But then somebody else, while I was fighting with that, somebody else suggested to me that I write a short for this company that was trying to do illustrated stories. You would write it and they were going to take pictures. And I did publish one or two through there. It didn't last long, but in trying to write a first story for that, I wrote, I was walking around trying to figure out what I was going to write. And I was with my daughter at this organic grocery store, and this, the guy who was bagging the groceries, who is now, he's a very close friend of my husband's. He leaned over to the cashier and said, that delivery guy was hot. And then I don't know, same thing as the pirate. Suddenly I'm like, oh yeah, delivery guy and the guy at the grocery store for the short. Well, that became special delivery. So that's not short. And that is a perennial problem of mine. I don't do short well. I do long a lot. But that was the second book I published, because then I was also trying to fill some, I don't know, it was Laura's Cave or something. And I was late and went over the word count again. And that became Hero, which was my first romance. So, and I have been all over and doing everything for 12 years. And yeah. So here we are.
Nice.
Yeah. So I started writing queer romance, and it was mostly JK's fault, because they said, yeah, I'm blaming you, because you said there's a press, Less Than Three Press now, that is accepting anthology or collection series, and I was like, okay, I'll write for that. And that became a frankly embarrassing novella called Across Borders, which is no longer in print because Less Than Three is no longer with us, unfortunately.
I have the paperback.
You have the paperback. Oh no, it's still out there. Okay. So yeah, other than that, I have been, I started a lot of my sort of ideas with fanfic. So Drary is one of the big ones, of course. And for those of you who are in the Sherlock fandom, John Locke. Yeah, so there's a little bit of fandom stuff in there. So yeah, that's how I got started.
All right. So for our next question, we're going to go intense right away. We're going to ask, how did you come to the realization that you were not cisgender, and what was coming out like?
So this one is actually kind of funny, because my realization that I was not cisgender is quite recent. It's within the last year. Thanks, quarantine.
Ditto.
Self-reflection, right?
And it was one of those moments where it's just you end up in a friend group It's like when you don't know you're gay, but like all your friends are gay, and you're like, I'm the token straight one, and they're all like, no, honey, no. It's kind of like that. Like I ended up with like all non-binary friends, and the place I just moved into is with all of my non-binary friends. And I was writing my current, or I call it my current work in progress, but it's on the third draft and it's mostly done. About the Greek god Dionysus, and he has a line where he's like, yeah, I'm a man because people see me as a man, but like, it's an artifice. It's all artifice, and I don't really care. And I'm like, oh, oh, okay. So it's by writing that I was like, oh, that's my relationship with gender. It's just kind of like it exists because other people think it exists. I see. Well, yeah, that's the whole story.
Thank you for sharing.
So yeah, I since December, I have been like conscious of the non-binary part, which was sort of, oh God, sorry, a pop-up just came up from a security thing. I'm like, no, I'm not going to take a quiz now. Okay, sorry. ADHD, refocusing. So it's December, but really that was sort of like the apex of a 10-year long, who the hell are you, sort of figuring it out. I'm just looking at you all. I'm definitely the grandma of the group here. And, you know, when you're born in the 70s, there's not, and in Iowa to boot, there's not exactly a lot of modeling going on. And there's sort of like a path and you do it. It's not like anybody ever told me anything. It's not like my parents were super religious or homophobic. This was not like, when I grew up, you either just, you know, did what, went through your assigned gender, or you so couldn't do it that you had to like explode out. And I unfortunately could muddle along for a long time. I happened to be lucky enough to marry a very understanding man who also has figured out his orientation in the last 10 years. And so we're like, as my daughter is somewhere between, and she calls herself sapphic because she has like, you know, some guys she thought is attractive, but mostly it's women. And she's very firmly asexual. So as she likes to say, nobody in this house is straight, and never has been. But so yeah, December, I'm still really figuring everything out. Definitely agender. Definitely gay as hell. I mean, I guess I'm probably demi-ish. I really don't know. I'm just alive, which after last year, for lots of personal reasons, I was just really glad to get here. So at this point, I'm like, screw everybody else and what they think. I don't know what I am yet, but I'll get there. So very much a work in progress.
Congrats. Yeah, I find that a lot of times queer people tend to group together even before we realize we're queer necessarily.
Yeah,
like most of my friends
husband and I were both like, we were the only one we could imagine being with, and we just sort of went on this wild internal ride and then went, oh, you too? Okay, yeah. That was easy. So
I think most of my friends growing up have come out as queer in some form or another.
Yeah, so I guess that's moving on to me. I sort of knew I was like different since I was in high school. Like we used to joke, and JK has known me since high school, so we used to joke that I drank so much tea that it was giving me testosterone. I don't know why that was such a weird joke that we had.
Do that?
No.
No.
Somebody invent that.
Yeah. So,
somebody invent testosterone tea. It'll sell amazing.
Yeah.
Hell, that would be a lot easier.
No, that's my that's actually my fanfic name, Testosterone Tea. So that is, I knew that there was something going on, but I didn't know what, because we live in a northern town in Canada, and it doesn't really have like a lot of like queer people. So I didn't figure out I was actually gender fluid until university. And basically, as soon as this person gave me like this quiz, or just not a quiz, but like a one of those survey things, they're just like, here, if you are queer, you can like fill out the survey. And I was like looking at it, and I was like, what is non-binary? And they explained it to me, and I was like, hey, that's me. And I was just so excited that I had to tell everybody basically immediately, and I've been sort of out as genderqueer since then. And it's been great. Like coming out has been sort of a continual process because that's what happens. But like people have been very accepting of my identity from where I am right now, so it's pretty good. So yeah.
Yeah,
That is good.
it's good to hear. All right, next question. Why do you think that male-male romance is appealing to so many people besides just gay men?
I think the answer is I've seen a whole bunch of posited explanations, but I think the one that has stuck with me the most is it allows you to craft a world without misogyny. Because so many people, especially queer people, are AFAB, and it is such an overwhelming presence in our lives that the ability to, in a fictional setting, just step out of it completely and just say like, this doesn't exist here, is incredibly freeing. And that's the answer I always come back to. I don't know if that's probably not the answer for a lot of individuals, but I think for me, that's what drew me into this world, especially, and in addition to knowing and like coming to terms with the fact that I'm not a cis woman, being able to explore outside of that mindset and not just write cis female characters and like branch out and write male characters and write agender characters and genderqueer characters just gave me the place to explore that as well.
For me, it's all about the patriarchy. Like you can't escape it. And the biggest taboo has always been that, you know, the big strong man can't like another big strong man or any other type of man. And once you break that, you can just play with anything. I really wish there were more. I wish there were more than just gay male predominantly out there. But I think that the reason that, I mean, I know it's out there, but like that it's not as mainstream. Like it exists, but it's always like in little corners, and like this pocket of community knows about these books and they'll tell you, but it's, I mean, when I see a big, you know, pushed either genderqueer book or lesbian book, or, you know, let's mix and match the alphabet mafia and all that stuff, I wish there were more of that, but I think that there's not as much because as a Western culture specifically, I guess in this instant, we're just really not there. Like we're still fixated on the male story and the male gaze. And I think there's a lot of different ways to break it. And for me, this is the one that I get in. And I think I've been so fixated on the male pairing so far because probably because I was trying to talk to myself, but it just, I don't know, there's something about me that it's like, I don't know, it just feels like the ultimate ice, you know, like axe to the system. Like it just feels like it shatters.
Yeah, for me, it's been a bit more personal, I think, because it sort of gave me a chance to explore my gender and sexuality. A lot of the times, just being able to say, okay, well, what would it be like to be a guy? And I'm gender fluid, so I switch between male and female a lot. So what would it be like to be a man in a relationship with another man? Or like, what would it be like to sort of play around with gender dynamics and figure out that like part of myself. And so that really helped. Writing it out actually really helped me come to like some conclusions about my own identity. So I think that in some ways romance is sort of something that helps a lot of people, writers and readers, about how they're going to like interact with the world, basically. So that's sort of like what I sort of thought was interesting about it.
Yeah, I think it's very common for, particularly AFAB, genderqueer, or trans men to like be into male romances, particularly if they're, attracted to men, because it allows you to sort of escape the dysphoria you might feel in your own body, or the like you said, the sort of patriarchal system that you might be experiencing, and just experience what it would be like to be a gay man.
Yeah, if I could just go off of what June was saying, I was thinking about like why, like I've read FF and I've enjoyed a lot of it, and there's a lot of really good, especially cartoons now are doing some really amazing FF stuff like She-Ra, and Steven Universe. But I always come back to MM. I think in large part because, like June was saying, it's like the ultimate like middle finger to the predominant culture and like the way that we define masculinity. Like every time it's so nice to be able to read something where you have cis men or even trans men being very emotional and like talking about their feelings and like connecting with themselves in a way that we don't really see outside of romance, because it so often is like brushed aside and be like, oh, these are just friend feelings, or no, what are you talking about? Those long loving gazes are just, it's not, what are you talking about? It's not gay. They're just friends. It's fine. So seeing that, I'm always very drawn to being contrary to what people expect and like turning tropes and things on their head. So I think that might be why I in particular am so drawn to it.
I love that you brought up She-Ra, because that, I feel like that's on so many levels, She-Ra is so great. But the thing that I love the most about it is that it has that mainstream gaze. Like a great chunk of the body of lesbian literature and queer and queer literature that's out there that's not gay romance is for the community. Does that make sense? Like it's for the people who belong to the community. And I think that's why gay romance is so attractive to people, or BL or anything. Like I love everything to do with I love reading other cultures that talk about queer relationships. Like I'm currently obsessed with, I've just been roving around Asia. Of course, I started in Japan. I have done some Thai. I'm deep into China right now. And I love it because I am such an observer to that culture. I doesn't matter how much I read about it. I still can't really like immerse myself in it like I can a Western story, and that allows me to see things that I couldn't see otherwise. But the thing that I love about She-Ra in particular, sorry, I lost my own train of thought, is that it's for mainstream, and so it's still queer, it's still lesbian and genderqueer, and like everything is still there, but it's packaged in a way that is it's so brilliant, because it's not like, here, let me introduce you to queer culture. Like I will never forget my daughter she watched it first because I am too jaded, and I was like, oh my God, it's just going to be queer baiting, and I'm not in the mood, and they're never going to let them do what it should be, and so I wouldn't do it. And it was late at night when she was watching the last season, binging it on the couch, and I was in the kitchen, and all of a sudden I heard like a primal noise, and I thought something was wrong with her. And I came in and she didn't quite cry, but it was like joy, surprise, euphoria, everything. And it was when they kissed. And she couldn't believe that happened. And I couldn't believe that it happened. And then, of course, we proceeded to watch it together. And we've watched it again since then. And we're going to do it again soon because it was just so normal. It wasn't, here, let me walk you gently. It wasn't, oh, it's a coming out story. Gosh, I'm gay. It was just, yeah, we're gay. And we're, it's not about, the romance was a side piece. It was a huge story about lots of things. And it was just gay as it goes. And that's what I want more of, because I feel like a lot, like this emphasis on male pairing in fiction across the globe is like all this warming up to, like, at some point I can't wait, because like all of a sudden people are going to start breaking the whole mold, and then I'm just going to get popcorn and read everything.
That's your experience with that reminds me of my experience watching Yuri on Ice for the first time.
Yes.
Same sort
Watching
of thing.
episode 10.
Like we had just started it because it looked kind of gay, and we were
Yeah,
like,
we're
well,
like, oh, they're just
and then it
queer
happened,
baiting.
we're like,
Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be one of those like foyer things, and then it's like, nope.
It happened.
yeah, we were sitting in this office because we had a TV near at that time, and yeah, if we saw that, we're like, did that just happen? It made a lot of noise.
Also,
Oh, yeah.
shout out to Critical Role for doing that so brilliantly in the season 2, which just ended. So if you want to get into Critical Role, it's thousands of hours of content. Good luck.
Thanks. Yeah, I was thinking going a little bit back to your discussion of like being able to see men being sensitive and stuff. I wonder if that is also like a big draw for people that are attracted to men, to be able to see men in a world that's kind of devoid of that like oppressive sort of standards of men, to be like very cut off emotionally.
Yeah.
My husband, a gay man, loves it.
Yeah.
He reads it all the time because that's the thing that he was always more sensitive, and he wasn't allowed, from his perspective. Like, he still struggles. I don't want to tell too many of his tales, but he struggles with like pressures that he has just absorbed from society over not quite 50 years to be a certain type of human, because he was assigned male, and it was so much harder for him to come out than me, because he felt like he still feels inadequate, and he has a hard time accepting. He gets nervous when, like, I push him a little bit, because I'm real adamant about like, you are not going to call me Heidi in public with your friends. You are going to call me they. Your parents may or may not be jerks about it, but we're going to fight them on it. And he comes along, and it usually, with a couple of exceptions, it works out really well. And so it helps him, but it's harder for him. And I know a lot of it's because he's a man, and he's just not allowed to feel those feelings. And I don't think it's for everybody, but it's definitely like, especially as queer men get older, I feel like they get, they settle into like, it's no longer like whenever I talk to young men, like, there's some who read, but a lot of them are just like, I'm too busy, exploring and seeing and doing. And then, you get settled, or I get a lot of letters from people who've lost their partner, and, they find gay romance to be comforting and a new way to explore the world without their partner, or because they never found one.
Cool. All right. Any more on that topic before we move to the next question? Or I feel like we had a nice discussion there. The next question is about transgender romance. What have you read of transgender romance? Do you have any recommendations? And then what would you like to see more of in terms of trans romance?
Definitely some of the first trans romance I read was from E.E. Ottoman through Less Than Three, because I was going through the back catalog when I started publishing with them. And I mean, I just recommend all of E.E. Ottoman's back catalog. Though The Companion is the most recent release, came out in April. So I guess buy that one. But I love that they... in their stories, they're historical romance, but also trans, and it's like a real like middle finger to people who say like, oh, well, trans people are just a trend. They don't exist prior to 1995. And it's like, no, that's not true. And so seeing trans people in historical romance and also having erotica historical trans romance is just amazing. More of that, please.
I like Neon Yang, The Black Tides of Heaven. That was my first one, and it definitely was like the first seed of maybe you're agender. And it took me, obviously a long time to digest that seed, but I talked about it all the time. I love that book. I was bothering everybody to go read it. And I mean, a novella, I guess, technically, and there's the trilogy now, but that one really got me. There's this idea that, you could no one really picked their gender until I'm like, why don't we do that? Why don't we say until you are sexually mature, you just are they, and then you decide. Why not? That would be better. I would have been so much happier. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have had to be a teenager at 48. That would have been something.
Okay, so I would like to second E.E. Ottoman's work because amazing. My favorite is A Matter of Disagreement.
Oh, that was a good one.
Oh, it's so good. I love it.
And I think that might have been the first one I read, actually.
Yeah, I think that was the first one of those I read, for sure. And let's see. I've definitely read a few from Old Lesson 3 Press. I think one that a lot of people enjoyed, but I haven't read yet, is Peter Darling by Austin Chant. I can't remember if it's out again yet. I think it is, but
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one's got a lot of acclaim. So maybe check that one out. As for what I would like to see in trans romance, I would like to see more branching out from maybe contemporary romance to things like SFF romance. I'm a science fiction fantasy writer, and I just want to see trans people everywhere, all over the place.
As my daughter always says, I just want gay people to exist. I just want them there, living, doing, being, falling in love or not, just we stand double trouble in this house.
Nice. Oh man, I just as everyone was talking, I actually realized there was a trans character that meant a lot to me when I was a kid that I didn't even understand that they were trans, and it is Kohaku in Wish, the angel. Because I remember as a kid, the fan translation I read, because I'm a terrible pirating gremlin, used they for Kohaku because canonically Kohaku is agender. That Kohaku is not a girl or a boy because they're an angel. And the official English release chose to use she. And I remember being so mad about it. I was complaining to my friend who speaks Japanese, and she was like, it's not a big deal, she falls in love with a man, so obviously she's a girl. And I'm like, no, it's important that they're not a girl. And I'm realizing now why I got so mad about it.
Or in High School Host Club, the main character is also
Alex
is also doesn't feel like they need to label themselves, right? Is how.
Yeah, Haruhi is basically yeah, I'm a girl, I guess.
Yeah.
I very much identify with that. This idea of, oh, you want to put me in a blazer? Okay. Oh, you want to put me in a dress? Okay. I'm currently resisting the femininity just because it's been so because I was basically in drag for a long time and it never worked, and so there's a lot of head stuff, but yeah, I love that energy of I'm just here to go to school.
My gender is meh.
My gender is no. No.
Mine is I do not wish to be perceived. Yeah. All right. Next question we have. Have you had any notable or interesting experiences in the queer romance community that you'd like to talk about?
I mean, this one for sure. Meeting a lot of cool people, and like I'm a lurker on the internet. I don't really talk to people. I just like sit in my little corner and retweet fan art and basically just be like, here's a fan fiction. Okay, goodbye. But I have been really enjoyed just like following people on Twitter and just like seeing what other people are doing and what other people are up to and like the discussions going around. I mean, Twitter's an outrage machine, so like sometimes the discussions aren't necessarily productive. But I've like through queer romance and through the queer community in general online, I've discovered so many amazing authors and stories that I never would have found otherwise. And I've grown so much as a person because of it.
I don't know. I just hang out in fandom anymore. I have given up my attempts to be social. I am not a social person. So I like reading stuff though, and I do tend to join. I am also on Twitter, but I've wheeled it down to news, which I am now wheeling down again, and a bunch of random assorted fandoms, and then they're all young, and so they morph into other fandoms, and then I end up reading half of them. And so mostly I'm the geriatric who occasionally joins conversations, and they're like, "Who are you?" I'm like, "Sorry, I'll shut up."
Oh.
But it's because
You
I
have the wisdom of age. You can tell those whippersnappers.
No.
We have to listen to our elders.
Yes.
Yeah, I love Twitter. Twitter is like where I live, basically. I just stay on there and read all the things that people say. So I'm definitely like a big fan of Twitter. And when I was a bit younger, we used to go to Gay Romance Northwest conference. That hasn't been a thing for a while now, but there was like 5 years where there was just conferences in Seattle, and it was just amazing because we got to go to Seattle, and I was just like, yeah, love Seattle. And I got to meet all these amazing people, including the owners of Less Than Three Press, who were really amazing. So just had lots of fun meeting people in person and being able to like be like, sign this book that I just bought. And it's just like basically a cycle of people buying your books so that you can sign them, and then you buying their books so they can sign yours. And so you never make any money at them because you just like keep buying each other's books, and it's just like a cycle. So yeah. Yeah, that's my experience. It's a great experience. So if there was any other cons that I could go to face to face, I would love to be able to do that again.
Yeah, shout out to cons. I used to staff cons a lot because I'm poor, and I didn't mind working because there was usually only like a handful of panels I wanted to go to, but they were always like the academic ones, like this one, or like discussion panels about interesting sociological topics. I remember I went to Convergence in Minneapolis that they had a professor from Tokyo University who was like a professor of women's studies who was talking about like why women are attracted to violence, like sexual violence in stories written by women for women. And it was a very, very interesting panel.
I remember. Yeah. I remember going to Gay Romance Northwest one year, and we were at the tables selling our books, and I think I was at a table with E. Ottoman, and there was this older trans woman who came to our table to talk to us, and she was like very quiet and very shy, and she just kind of like told us all about her experiences and like how she had been out of the closet in like the 80s and then ended up going back into the closet for years, and she had just come to this conference because she thought it was really interesting and was really enjoying herself meeting lots of other queer people and kind of seeing what the younger generation was up to. So that was really cool and meaningful. Yeah. Question. what do you think, and we've touched on this a little bit, what do you think the future of queer romance holds?
I'm really hopeful that it's more queer people in books that are not relegated to the queer section of the bookstore, just like queer characters in everything. Yeah, I'm just waiting for, who's gonna be the first mainstream show that's brave enough to put a male attracted male character in their TV show that is just going to be on the CW or whatever, that isn't just like the gay character, like that has other traits. But I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen at some point, and I'm hopeful for it.
I couldn't even begin to guess. Publishing is so weird right now, like on every level. So I don't know. I'll read it if it shows up.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it expands outward and it's just like, I don't know, a glitter bomb or something. It's just like, everything should be queer. And it's just that, like, queer romance saved me in a lot of ways. And I want that for other people too. Like, it should be, like, out there for, like, queer teens who need it to see representation. And I'm just like...
Yeah, I'd like to see more YA. Or not necessarily like the young, like just rep for all the kids' children's books. How about that? Let's do more trans children's books.
Yeah, YA is actually, it has a lot of queer characters and queer stories going on right now. YA is kind of leading the charge.
Yeah.
And it feels a little icky because like YA is like the woman's corner in a lot of ways. Like it's become kind of like oh, you're a female author, you must write YA. Like,
yeah.
And like, so on the one hand, it's really great that YA is moving in that direction, but at the same time, it's like, of course it's YA. That people can accept this because like it's the one that like is for girls. It's the one that's easily like boxed off and ignored. It's not real literature, but it happens to all genre fiction, really.
Yeah, it's interesting to see because for so long, specifically queer and male romance has been relegated to small publishers because it really hasn't been picked up by any of the big publishers, particularly with romance. And so it'll be interesting to see if it becomes more published. Like I think Harlequin, what was it, like 5 years ago now? They did their first gay romance by KJ Charles.
I think so, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Mainstream publishing is in such a strange... It's like Freefall is like, that's too linear. It's like this sort of like strange explosion, reorganization, possible death, who knows? And so like, if anything happens, that's what I'm like, because I feel like there's so much change, like, because it's like the pandemic affected things in both good and bad, and there's just been lots of changes, and like because they've been consolidating and doing everything ever since like the late 90s, and now I feel like they can't get much smaller. And so like I don't know if they're gonna blow up and we'll have a million little ones again like we did in the old days or what. So I think that they're so focused on money. That's the biggest reason, because like I was approached and I know so many people who, especially in the early days, were approached for like deals, but they were bad. Like it was like, here, do you want this really crappy royalty rate and a terribly low print run and no distribution, but you'll be with us? And I'm like, no.
Because you can do just as much or more, self-publishing or publishing with small presses these days.
Well, because the only advantage for me to go with a big press would be if they would give me more advertising, if they would give me more exposure. But what they wanted was the fans and the body of work that I already had for them. And I'm like, so this is for you, not me, but you're not going to give me anything. And every time I would ask what I needed, they would be, oh no, because I was supposed to just be excited to be there. And I'm like, no, I'm an old hooker. I know what you're doing. So
comics is very similar right now too, where it's like they want the exposure from the artists, but they just want the artist to be excited to be like, oh, but you're working for DC. It's like, yeah, but you're like not paying me anything.
So corporatized. It's because in the old days, Like in the late 80s, early 90s, there were so many more presses. There were not the big five. Like there were the big 50. Like and they weren't big. They were run. And so if you published a book, it would be published by people who like wanted to, like the people in charge of the decisions would be people like books and wanted to support authors, and they kind of knew it was a quirky business and they worked with it, and then they all got absorbed into bigger and bigger things. And so you have people who love books in there, but they don't make much money and they don't have much control, and above that you have people who just want to make money. And so it's changed the flavor. And so when you have something like Queer Rep in any orientation, until you get a society that is like, I'll read anything that's great and doesn't have to, because I don't know how many times I've been in a line and somebody saw what I wrote. Like there was one time when I was giving away books at RT, and because I just had a bunch, I hate the whole like trying to do the tax thing with when you sell. And so I had a bunch of paperbacks from this and that. And there was a period where I gave a bunch away and they were free. And there was this long line of people wanting to look. And then somebody leaned over and said, so what is that? Like they were like 5 people back. And I said, well, this is, romance. I said, well, what kind? And I said, well, it's gay romance. And they just like peeled off. Like went and left, and I'm like, so like you got that, and so publishers see that. Oh, sorry, I hit something again, and they think, oh, I'm not going to be able to make this a big thing, and so that's why they kept trying to find like an established author to become a big thing magically, I guess, with no support, no advertising.
But don't worry, they slapped a rainbow on their logo, so know that they support queer authors.
But that's really good advice for younger authors: is don't take a deal just because it's a big company. Like make sure you're still getting paid what you're worth and you're getting the support and stuff that you need.
I was really lucky early on because I'd been trying to get, I wasn't always trying to get published, but I'd been like learning about the book business and like basically writing for other people, because I wrote since I was 12 until I was in my mid-20s for myself. And that was the first time I said, oh, I'd like other people to try to read my work. And I had lots of support from local and national organizations, and I had a lot of people who mentored me in really helpful ways. And just by watching them go through their careers, it's like, oh, it's not, like I just think there's this myth that you get the contract and now it's all going to be great and you're going to become J.K. Rowling or something slightly less. And it's like, no, it's like, you can make a living, but you got to like work your tail off and you got to keep up, and no. It's not that easy.
Yeah, it's not the 19th century where you can just be like living in the woods, just contacting your publisher through letters and just be like, here's the manuscript.
I sent several manuscripts in. I had to print them out, put them in a box. The old days before 9/11. When that happened, they all went digital and they never looked back.
Mail it to yourself and don't break the seal, and that's your copyright.
Yeah, when I first started researching publishing, it was like, make sure you send a self-addressed stamped envelope in with your pages. I'm like, oh.
That used to be the thing.
Yeah.
And you go into the literal slush pile. It was a room.
Yeah, it was a pile.
Full of like they would be falling over heaps of manuscripts. Good times. Now they're just on people's hard drives.
Yeah. All right, so one last question, and then we will maybe take a 5 to 10 minute break and then come back and do some audience questions, if that's good with everybody. So the last question is just to talk about your books. What books have you published recently? Anything you'd like to promote? Any recommendations you have?
So I am recently published with 9 Star Press. They just released a collection of my fairy tales, 3 of which were published with less than 3. 2 of them are new. It is called A Queer Little Book of Tales. You can find them at hrharrison.com. All the links to where you can buy them at various retailers are there. You should be able to find them most places. If you're international and you have trouble finding them, you can find me at Mythstakes on Twitter, and I'm happy to help you out. Other than that, I'm kicking around the Dionysus book I mentioned earlier. I'm going to try to publish it later this year. I'm not sure if I want to, if 9 Star is going to be its destination, or if I brave the waters and actually try to traditionally publish it with one of the scary big publishers, despite the fact that I just shaded them very publicly. So we'll see.
They won't watch this.
That's, you never know. The internet is.
They
forever.
know. It's not. They know. They know who they are.
That's true.
Oh, me. The last book I wrote was The Bookseller's Boyfriend, which came out last year. I think it was last year. My sense of time is very broken. Last January, I think. Yes. No, this January.
Pre-pandemic. No.
Yeah, no, it was last year because it was no. Was it this year?
In the before times or the after times?
I don't know. I think it might have been January. This year? Was it this year? All I don't know. Bookseller's Boyfriend. At some point in the last 18 months, I wrote a book, and well, no, because it must have been this year. God, really? I checked out of everything. I very briefly considered, not very briefly, I seriously considered quitting. The gender thing was not doing it for me. But I've decided I would keep writing. What kept me going is it's the first of, so it's a Copper Point series, and it's like I just designed it to be this universe I could dip in and out of. And I wrote a first trilogy, and now that's the first book of the second trilogy in the same town, but different, group of people. And I'm writing the second one now. I've been writing it for 20 months. I have almost 20,000 words. I didn't write at all last year. All these people going, all the works that'll come out of this pandemic, and I'm like, no.
I edited.
And so, yeah,
I wrote a couple scenes.
I have now graduated to the point where I write a half hour every day, and that was big. It's taken me 2 months of gradually upping it, and it's been a ride. So sometime I wrote The Bookseller's Boyfriend, I guess. And it's just HeidiCullinan.com somewhere. There'll be a link. Or, I don't know, Google it. It's everywhere. And I'm just working on stuff. I'm just I'm writing words down, and that's the miracle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I have a book coming out with 9 Star Press this month. June 21st, Weekend Girl is coming out. Weekend Girl is basically a contemporary romance with a gender fluid protagonist, and the love interest is this very cute, adorable guy that is just amazing. I don't know. I thought that it was fun, so I was like, yay. So it's from 9 Star Press. I think somebody said that there was one coming up from. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's gonna be fun.
And I'll promote my stuff too. You can find me at jkpendragon.com. I'm in the process of republishing all my old less than 3 books, mostly with 9 Star Press as well.
Oh my God, you have all my empathy. I hated that. I had to do that from Sam Hain, and I thought I was going to die. So all my energy to you.
Having to you have to read through all your old stuff, and it's just I know that other people are going to like this, but I can't handle it.
Yeah, all of my stuff is newly edited. Just
same.
For
fun. I've got some of my really old stuff on my website that you can read for free, because I was like, I don't want to republish these, but they're just sitting around. So here, have free ebook or free novellas. And then I have YA superhero romance with a gaming character out called Junior Hero Blues. And coming up next is my story about a trans fisherman and a seal mermaid called Sea Lover. So
cool.
Those are my books. So we're at, it's 1:24 here. I guess it's probably 3:24 Central Time. So do we want to come back at 4 p.m.? So in 6 minutes, and we will do some questions from the audience then?
That sounds good.
It's at 3:30, you mean?
Oh, yeah, sorry, not 4.
Yeah, at the half hour. Yeah,
I'm great at this, guys. I'm doing great. At the half hour, in 5 minutes, we'll come back and we'll do some audience questions. And so, there we've got the moderator is going to go through and do some and pick out some questions. So if you want to start posting those questions in the chat, I don't know if that would be I don't know. You can post them in the chat now, or you can repost them when we come back, and she's just going to pick out some of the ones for us, and we'll answer them then. So yeah, see you guys in 5.
trying to make tea.
Oh.
I didn't get it done. It's okay.
That's why you need a proper drink sleeve.
Helps if you put your headphones in.
It's one of those that keeps it going for it keeps it warm for half an hour, so it'll be fine.
All right, we're all back. Here we are. And we got our first question. Any cool fan mail or fan item that you've received?
Only ones that I've paid for. I've commissioned some art of some of my stories,
Awesome.
but I've never gotten it for free. Or if I have, nobody's tagged me and shown me.
Okay, I have show and tell, maybe.
Oh, show and tell.
Oh shoot, I don't have that one. Okay. Oh yes, I have multiple show and tell. All right. So I have my Tom of Finland. That was from a fan.
Ooh.
I got dried frog pills from a fan. Terry Pratchett shout out. You can't open them unless, right? Maybe you can put things in it, but there's no actual dried frog pills. And then this is from a fan who's a good friend. I did commission this, but she's made me several ones. This one, but I don't have the ones that she just spontaneously made. So this is from one of my books. You can't really see it. There we go. And on the back is this octopus guy, because that's the theme in the book, that he has an octopus on his brain. And so this is the inside. It's like characters
sick.
and
Oh, wow.
I had her make a couple, and I should give this to my kid because Anna figured out that she was autistic by reading my book. I thought she was gonna like it for the anxiety part. Oh, my water's ready. But she said, "Why?" She said, "Yeah, I really relate to Emmett." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, you used all my stories." I said, "I did." So yeah, that began her journey there. But yeah, I've got like nice letters.
Yeah, it's always so nice to get a letter from like a reader who enjoyed your work.
I've gotten a lot in the last year that came at really good times. I don't think that people who write reader letters realize how much they can sometimes, save the author that they are so nervous to write to. I'm like, a lot of them, like every now and again, I'll get one. I have a couple, mostly a big unfinished one. I apologize, but I have a couple of Yuri and Ice Fix, and every now and again, lately somebody's been going through because I've gotten a whole ton of comments on one of them, or kudos, sorry, one comment, but mostly it was.
If we're talking about fan stuff, like fandom stuff,
go for it.
There's nothing that warms my heart more than seeing that somebody has gone through and kudos every single fic in the series I have about my Dragon Age OC, the one who married Dorian over here. I wrote like 200,000 words about this boy, and I love him dearly. And so whenever I see someone has read through the entire series from start to finish and has kudos every single one, I'm just like, you're my new favorite person. It's a little thing, but it means so much. And I've gotten some really lovely comments on some of my recent fics that I've been writing for Critical Role, and it's just, critters are so nice generally. There's a lot of drama, but overall, they're very nice.
Yeah, if we're talking about fandom stuff, I have definitely had fan art of some of my fics, and I'm just like, yes, oh my god, this is amazing. So for those of you who are out there being like, I'm not going to write them today, I'm just like, please write me. Like, please send me stuff. I will be happy. Yeah. So yeah, that's my answer.
You are never imposing.
No, it means a lot to get.
Unless you're tagging us in a negative review. Don't tag people in negative reviews. But positive reviews, fan art, meta, maybe not meta. Maybe meta. Depends. Use your best judgment on that one. But like, we always want to see it. I promise.
I had somebody do some post some fan art of Sea Lover on Twitter a little while ago. I pulled it up, but it's by the author, or the Twitter user ILIIBRA, who did this beautiful drawing. And it was when Sea Lover was out of print, and it kind of inspired me to like, because they were like, I missed this book, I want to share it with my friends, and I was like, ah.
All right, that one's the next one.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, well, I gotta republish it now.
Do you want me to just send you the PDF? I'll send you the PDF.
Yeah, exactly. I did that. Yeah, okay, so. All right, earlier it was mentioned that MM romance is a way to escape misogyny, but I've seen so much misogyny in MM romance, i.e. the top is stereotypically masculine, physically larger or worker, while the bottom is stereotypically feminine, smaller, does housework. What are your thoughts on this, and do you see change happening?
Absolutely, change is happening. I remember those fics very well from when I was younger. And I think part of it is just my taste has matured, or like the fandoms that I've migrated to don't do it as much. But I used to see a lot of it, especially in anime fandoms. If you want to try to escape it, I would recommend branching out of anime fandoms, because Japan has its own hang-ups. That's not the right word.
They're struggling.
Japanese's gay male culture is very different from the US and Western ones in general. If you want to try to get away from that, I recommend digging into a Western fandom just to see what's out there. But I definitely do see change happening, and I remember when lemon fic would be like sporked because like nobody understood how like the freaking anatomy worked. Like you saw some like really crazy stuff. Just oh man, just like men writing women, like that Twitter, but it was like everybody.
Yeah.
And it was published. Oh my God. Like erotica itself has come a long way since then, since like the early 2000s. So
the problem too with this is, I'm going to have to generalize here, and the as a general rule, stereotypes exist because in fiction, because like if it sells, somebody's going to write it again, and it can be prominent because it's sold a lot. And it's not that there's not people not wanting it. Like, I mean, I have times where sometimes stereotypical stuff can be weirdly comforting. Like it's not so much about the stereotype. It's like, I don't know, it's like already been chewed and I don't have to think. But I do love it when things are pushed or mixed around. And I feel there's stuff, there's a lot in Asia being diced up. It's not necessarily all one way, but I totally agree with you. The thing is, like, I like to mix things up, but at the same time, it's like, it's this real push and pull, because if the large body of your readership wants to, likes you for a certain thing, it's hard to not do something else. And so I think especially if you had a publisher that was direct, if I've had publishers that are very like in your face about what you will write, and that makes it hard, because you already have to create a whole universe and people by yourself and make it make sense. And it's going to take a long time. And now you have to like please an editor and try to write to some sort of market. And along the way, you lose your way on like making real hard decisions on whether or not you're like accurately representing, gender diversity or like to types, and whether or not you're breaking stereotypes. If you start thinking about too much, it breaks your head. It's not that you shouldn't, but I feel like this is where it's good, that there's a big body of people. And I like that we're all reading internationally now. Like I have fans in so many different countries that, they see different things sometimes in my work. And when I read things from people, like it's even just like, like two of you from Canada, like that, a Canadian perspective is not the same as an American perspective. And I love reading English queer books because it's, again, different. Australian queer books. And so I think that that will be fixed the more readers demand it. That's obviously the easy thing. But the more we all push ourselves and each other, not in gently moving forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, what a great question. I think that it's very interesting to see the way that the dynamics are slowly changing over time. And I have seen like a lot in different like places, like even in Western fandom or Western areas where there is like that stereotype where it's like the big buff guy and the little guy who's the bottom, obviously, and they also have they also have like that thing where the female extra characters, like the side characters, are like stereotyped or flat, and I find that like very annoying because there is misogyny in like sometimes.
Right.
But I think that having these conversations is going to help with actually making sure that doesn't necessarily happen all the time. Like if we have the conversations, then people will be like, oh yeah, that's important to.
Well, and we're still deconstructing the patriarchy.
Mhm.
And it's not that if you just put queer characters in, suddenly the patriarchy's gone. It's still there. Misogyny is hand in hand with the patriarchy. That's it's handmaiden. And so it's hard, like it's in the same way that I am, ever since I like had the light bulb moment, I have been actively trying to figure out who I am, who I want to be. And it's a constant, like I'm the only one that matters, but I'm always trying to sort out, like, is this thought mine or is this something that I've absorbed from the air? And I think that that absolutely happens in our fiction. It happens to us as readers. I mean, as much as we, want to do the right thing, sometimes we, as readers or as authors, it's just easier to go the soft way. That's the path is already trodden, and it doesn't mean it's right, but I think you're exactly right. Like, the misogyny is a huge problem, and it's part of the whole thing.
I'm seeing in the comments people saying, and I agree, like it's definitely not just something that comes out of Asia. Like this is just our culture's cis heteronormativism showing up in gay relationships, right? Like the idea that there's a man and a woman in the relationship, and
That's true.
that one partner has to be the feminine partner and one partner has to be the masculine partner, and that's just something that, like you said, it's just ingrained in us so much that even when we are imagining, non-straight relationships, we still are trying to put those roles onto people. So it's definitely something to be that, and I think society is becoming more aware of it, but it's definitely something that's very much ingrained in gay culture, not just in gay romance and YA or in yaoi and stuff, but just in general. There's this idea of there has to be this male and female role. So it's definitely something to be cognizant about when you're writing and reading and to think about. But again, also there is the idea of that a lot of people go to these types of stories to see men that aren't so stereotypically masculine, and that there's nothing wrong with there being traditionally feminine men being considered objects of desire either. So that's something to think about as well.
It's complicated.
It's very complicated. We could go on about it for a long time, I think. Okay. Another question from, I should say, the person who asked, Noko Trioli. The biggest challenge I have with writing my original fiction is deciding on gender or lack thereof for my characters. It's usually what stops my writing dead in its tracks. Maybe would you have any advice for tools or tips to help me and other writers start to overcome that obstacle?
If you feel like the character could be any gender, I mean, I'm a D&D player. I would just make a roll chart, roll the dice, see how it turns out, and just go with it. Just say, like, I'm going to follow what the dice say, even if it makes a weird character. Weird characters get attention. Weird characters are the ones that people love. So if it makes like a weird combination of tropes, like that makes it all the better. So if you really, really can't decide, just let fate decide. I
mean, reading the question, my first thought was, this sounds like a person who has their own struggles. Like, to me, if it were me, that would be coming out of my own, like, I don't know, like, not necessarily which am I, but like the idea that like you're clearly wrestling with gender constructs. So my advice would be to just write it and say, and like sometimes some of my best works and some of my most popular works are ones that I said, this is probably going to be a disaster. Nobody's going to want to publish it. And it was just like this huge relief. And then I just wrote whatever I wanted. And those tend to be the best books because you're not sitting there. You have to get the world out of your head. I mean, the whole thing with writing fiction is obviously you're making something up, but you're saying, here's a world with some people that I made. Do you want it? And that's a bold thing to do. It's a little bit wild, and you really have to embrace it if you're going to do it. If you start like trying to hold back, it's like I had in college I was in choir, and we had a director, and he said, if you're going to make a mistake, make it a really big one. And so it was, and because you usually didn't, like, you could usually, it's like my daughter plays French horn, and she gets really picky about what she's doing, and oh, that wasn't quite right. And I'm sure there are people who could listen and have their own opinion, but generally it sounds really good because she's really good. And so that's true with everything. So if you're worried about it, it's probably just you worrying about this idea of being exposed. I mean, you're saying it specifically to gender, so there's something about gender that's making you feel exposed, or that you're worried you're getting wrong. So just do it. And if it's a mistake, despite what social media will try to tell you, that, once you make a mistake, you need to like retire, go to the woods, and never speak again. If you make a mistake, you go, ooh, okay, you learn and you go on. I mean,
yeah, some of my advice would be similar to what Jen said, as just start writing. And it doesn't, like, writing can be edited afterwards. That's the main thing, is that, like, you don't need to necessarily have like this entire world in your head right off the bat. Like, it comes together as you write, and you can fix things after the fact through editing and revision. So if you're having trouble starting writing, some of the things that I do are things that I call pre-writing, which is like things like free writing, which is just like writing a whole bunch of stuff down without worrying about what you're writing. Like anything, like just start writing, and don't worry about even grammar or anything like that. Just write it. Or mind mapping, if you have like those little bubble things, like write things in bubbles and like branch it off and see if you can come up with like something that suits you. Or there's listing and brainstorming, so just like listing off things that you want to include in your story, things like questioning, like asking questions about what you want to include as well. So I used to teach writing, so that's sort of like what I have for you from like when I used to do that. So that's my advice. So thank you.
can I do a quick backtrack? I saw a comment go by and I wanted to address it. It was talking about the Asian representation of male characters. I want to say somebody was like concerned the idea that like Asia is behind or something, or that they are the stereotypes. I want to say that I think that Asia is producing some of the best gay romance I've seen. And I am absolutely obsessed with it. I think in so many ways, I will even say China is so much more progressive in like the idea that they have this huge movie out of a very popular book, and they let it be largely gay, and then the Donghua for Heaven Official's Blessing is stepping right up in there. The Word of Honor that just came out, that was gay.
I would want to clarify. I'm not saying that like Asian culture, like a Japanese culture. Yeah. Obviously, the stuff that I was reading is written in English. It's written by Americans, or largely by Americans, obviously not all of them. But they're pulling from it. It's like a stereotype of a stereotype of a stereotype. That's why it becomes so.
Well, in English translations of Asian is full of problems, like as you already addressed. Mm-hmm. So I saw that, and I don't want to like necessarily reopen it. And I'm sorry, I felt like I was calling you out. I wasn't trying to. I know that fear, especially with everything America's doing right now. My God. But I just wanted to say, I think that Asia has, I learn a lot. Like I at this point feel like the best thing I can do for my own writing is to read what other people are doing. And right now Asia is really doing it for me. So sorry, I didn't mean to hijack.
All right, next question.
Any recent work / comic / manga you have read and would like to recommend?
See, I just moved. I haven't had time to read like anything recently.
Mm.
Besides like my own stuff. And like just the prestigious amount of Critical Role fan fiction I've been consuming recently. So that's all I got.
I'm reading all like so much Danmei, some of which I acknowledge I forget the titles of because I just have so many tabs open. So I'm like, which one was that again? I'm reading a lot of Korean right now. I have a deep relationship with Lezen comics, and I have like, I don't know, all of them. I don't know. I'm like, which ones? They're all good. Obviously, everything MXTX is putting out, I'm consuming in every format. But a Priest, yeah, and Thai. What was the 1,000 Stars? That's on YouTube. It's a Thai drama. That's really good. Manga. I've read some, but I can't remember titles because I'm terrible.
Yeah, so I have been reading some romance. I have read Boyfriend Material by I think it's by Alexis Hall, which was really awesome. I loved that one. And also Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's on my nightstand, and I can't remember who wrote that. I can't read it from here. Yeah, so those two are really good. I just bought them recently because they've been everywhere. People have been recommending them, so I would second that recommendation now because they're awesome. So that's my recommendation so far. I haven't been had time to get into manga. My sister has 1 million manga, and I'm just like, okay.
That's all I read.
Yeah, Casey McQuinston.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There we go. So those are the two that I would recommend. Yeah. Thank you.
My recommendation for queer romance is always KJ Charles. She's my favorite male romance and queer romance author, and she's like one of the most popular ones out there. But she's really good.
If you popular for a reason.
Pardon?
She's popular for a reason.
She's popular for a reason. She's very good. And then this is an older show, but I always think about when I think about like male stories and television. Have you guys seen the show In the Flesh?
I've heard of it.
It's a British show about zombies who get cured, but they're still zombies, but they have their minds back, and it's all about this like small town dynamic of returning to life as normal after the zombie apocalypse. But the main character is I think bisexual and has a relationship with another man, and it's very like subtly done and not too over the top, and it's just a really good show. I think there's a couple seasons of it, so I'd recommend that if you have some free time to watch something.
If anybody wants, I do have a ton of manga that I read, but if somebody wants to nag me on Twitter, Heidi Cullinan, that's my handle there. So just at me and say, tell me some stuff, just list a manga comic, show. I'll go dig it up.
Yeah, I think I saw a comment, some people wanting to know what our Twitter handles are. Mine's just JK Pendragon. And I think you mentioned yours, HR, was... I
did. It's Myth Stakes. So like myth, like mythology, and then stakes, like the end of mistakes.
Mine is AA_Powell on Twitter. So
hit us up there.
It's also linked on my website, which is
if you go to the
easier to remember.
Yeah, and if you go to the list of the attendees for the con, all our information is there as well.
Oh, is it? Yes, we did submit that a while ago.
I think it is anyway. It should be.
I was tagged on Twitter when they made the announcement about this panel, so my Twitter is in there.
All right. What time do we have until? Do we only have 5 minutes left, or do we have until 30 after? Oh, well, we can just keep going until we get
5 minutes.
Do we have any more?
5 minutes.
Okay. Do you have any more questions?
Cut us off. No.
What were your childhood heroes in fiction?
My childhood hero was Sabriel from the Abhorsen trilogy, as is known in the US, or the Old Kingdom series, as it's known everywhere else. Garth Nix is a fabulous writer, and I adore Sabriel with every fiber of my being. And if you like audiobooks, the audiobook is narrated by Tim Curry, and it's amazing. So if you ever just want Tim Curry to talk to you about being a magic reverse necromancer, i.e. other people raise the dead and you make the dead go back, it is a fabulous book. 10 out of 10. Do recommend.
God, I don't know that I had a hero, and I was a weirdo, but I was on a farm in the country. I read Charlie Brown comics from the library, and we had a very small library, like it fit in my office. And so I don't know, the air, I guess. I ran around outside making stuff up. And so.
Yeah, I think I also had a similar experience where I was outside most of the time, but I think that my childhood heroes were those 5 kids from Animorphs. If any of you remember the Animorph books by Kay Applegate, yeah, I love those books so much.
They get dark if you've not read the Animorph books. Just be warned.
They do get dark. It's literally about child soldiers, basically. So I'm just okay, but I love them.
I grew up loving Harry Potter. I'm a little bit sad about that now.
Yeah,
it's bittersweet. I'm taking what I learned from the fantastic world of Harry Potter and just writing aggressively queer fantasy content to get out my feelings.
I was having my child when Harry Potter came out. Just to show you how old I am. I told you I'm the geriatric of the group.
Any more questions?
We have time for another quick one if there's one more.
Any books or comments about gay romance, including trans men, preferably not YA?
E.E. Ottoman's basically their entire catalog.
Yeah, E.E. Ottoman is second.
Yeah, 100%.
I think Heidi Below has written some trans romances as well. Just
I can't remember. I think so. Maybe. Oh, it's been so long.
Check out 9 Star Press, because I feel like a lot of queer and trans authors are starting to gravitate towards them in sort of the wake of Lesson 3.
Oh, Megan Dare also has some.
Yes. Yeah.
The world of, oh God, what's the name of the series? It's the one that starts with the High King's Golden Tongue. I don't remember the name of the whole series, but that world is incredibly cool because it is a world without transphobia. So the 3rd book in that series has a trans male main character who gets pregnant and has children, but everyone still recognizes as a man, and it is fabulous. The whole series, 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of comics. I don't know that there are any, sadly. Just books. Black Tides of Heaven, it's very agender. That's that Neon Yang series. But not really trans men though. So
yeah, go get out there and write some for us, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Austin.
Somebody has one there.
Oh, and thank you. Fujikon has put our names in the chat there. Yeah, so I guess we're pretty much out of time. Thank you so much to everyone for coming. This is really great. And I do think that the panel will be recorded and posted afterwards. Yes. Correct me if I'm wrong. So
yeah, I looked at the schedule earlier.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I see a lot of people saying, can you write down the names of all those recommendations? If you come ask us on Twitter, we'll be happy to
come bother us.
Yeah.
Yes, feel free to bother me on Twitter for recommendations. The series I recommended was The High King's Golden Tongue is the first book. And that's Dare, spelled D-E-R-R.
Okay, thank you guys so much.
I'm also in the author roundtable tomorrow, so if you want to see more of me, I will be there.
Yeah, enjoy everybody the rest of the con, and
there's some
go to lots of panels. Check out the author roundtable. I almost forgot I'm in that too.
Thanks, FutureCon, for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank
having
you.
me.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.